Part 2 Development Chapter 6 Analyzing the Audience. Advertisers are shrewd analysts of people's needs and wants, extensively researching our buying habits and lifestyle choices to identify what motivates us. To engage your listeners and encourage their involvement in your message, you too must investigate your audience. Audience analysis is the process of gathering and analyzing information about audience members' attributes and motivations with the explicit aim of preparing your speech in ways that will be meaningful to them. This is the single most critical aspect of preparing for any speech. Assuming an audience-centered perspective, throughout the speech preparation process, from selection and treatment of the speech topic to making decisions about how you will organize word and deliver it, will help you prepare a presentation that your audience will want to hear. Adapt to audience physiology or psychology. Who are your listeners? Audience analysis involves investigating the audience's attitudes, beliefs, and values, their feelings and opinions towards the topic, towards you as the speaker, and towards the speech or occasion. Taking the measure of the audience is critical because audience members tend to evaluate information in terms of their own point of view rather than the speaker's, at least your audience, to support a cause. But unless you know something about their perspective on the topic, you won't be able to appeal to them effectively. Attitudes, beliefs, and values, while intertwined, reflect distinct mental states that reveal a great amount about us. Attitudes are our general evaluations of people, ideas, objects, or events. To evaluate something is to judge it as relatively good or bad, desirable or undesirable. People generally act in accordance with their attitudes, although the degree to which they do so depends on many factors. Attitudes are based on beliefs, the ways in which people perceive reality. Beliefs are our feelings about what is true or real. The less faith listeners have in the existence of something, UFOs for instance, the less open they are to hearing about it. Both attitudes and beliefs are shaped by values, our most enduring judgments about what's good in life, as shaped by our culture and our unique experiences within it. We feel our values strongly and strive to realize them. As a rule, audience members are more interested and pay greater attention to topics towards which they have positive attitudes and that are in keeping with their values and beliefs. The less we know about something, the more indifferent we tend to be. It is easier to speak interest in a different audience than it is to turn negative attitudes around. If the value fits, use it. Evoking some combination of the audience's attitudes, beliefs, and values in the speeches you deliver will make them more personally relevant and motivating. For example, the Biodiversity Project, an organization that helps environmental groups raise public awareness, counsel speakers to appeal directly to the three foremost values their audience members hold about the environment, discovered in nationally representative surveys commissioned by the project, offering the following as an example. You care about your family's health. Value number 1 is identified in survey. And you feel a responsibility to protect your loved one's quality of life. Value number 2. The local wetlands provide a sanctuary to many plants and animals. It helps clean our air and water and provides a space of beauty and serenity. Value 3. All of this is about to be destroyed by irresponsible development. Gauge listeners' feelings towards the topic. Consideration of the audience's attitudes and beliefs and values about a topic is key to offering a speech that will resonate with them. Is your topic one which the audience is familiar, or is it new to them? Do your listeners hold positive, negative, or neutral attitudes towards the topic? Once you have the information, using tools such as interviews and questionnaires, Adjust the speech accordingly. If topic if the topic is new to listeners, start by showing why the topic is relevant to them. Relate the topic to familiar issues and ideas about which they already hold positive attitudes. If listeners know relatively little about the topic, stick to the basics, include background information, steer clear of jargon, define unclear terms, repeat important points, summarizing information often. If listeners are negatively disposed towards the topic, focus on establishing rapport and credibility. Don't directly challenge the listener's attitudes, instead begin with an area of agreement. Discover why they have a negative bias in order to tactfully introduce the other side of the argument. Offer solid evidence from the sources they are likely to accept. Give good reasons for developing a positive attitude towards the topic. If listeners hold positive attitudes towards the topic, stimulate the audience to feel even more strongly by emphasizing the side of the argument in which they already agree. Tell stories with vivid language that reinforces listeners' attitudes. If the listeners are a captive audience, motivate listeners to pay attention by stressing what is most relevant to them. Pay close attention to the length of your speech. Gauge the listener's feelings towards you as a speaker. How audience members feel about you will also have a significant bearing on their responsiveness to the message. A speaker who is well liked can gain an initial hearing even when the listeners are unsure what to expect from the message itself. To create positive audience attitudes towards you, first display the characteristics of speaker credibility ethos described in Chapter 4. Listeners have a natural desire to identify with the speaker and feel that he or she shares their perceptions, so establish a feeling of commonality or identification with them. Use eye contact and body movements to include the audience in your message, sharing a personal story, emphasizing a shared role, and otherwise stressing the mutual bonds all help to create identification. So too does the strategic use of inclusive language such as we, you, I, and me. Here's a checklist to appeal to audience attitudes, beliefs, and values. Have you 1. Investigated audience members' attitudes, beliefs, and values towards your topic? 2. Assess the audience's level of knowledge about the topic. 3. Consider strategies to address positive, negative, and neutral responses to your speech topic. 4. Consider appealing directly to an audience member's attitudes and values in your speech. Adapt your message to audience demographics. Demographics are the statistical characteristics of a given population. At least 8 characteristics are typically considered when analyzing speech audience. Age, ethnic, cultural background, social status, including income, occupation, and education, religions, political affiliation, gender, and group affiliations. Any number of other traits, for example, disability, sexual orientation, place of residence, may be important to investigate as well. Knowing where the audience members fall in the relationship to audience demographics will help you identify your target audience, those individuals within the broader audience whom you are most likely to influence in the direction you seek. You may not be able to please everyone, but you should be able to establish a connection with your target audience. Age. Each age group has their own concerns, physiological drives, and motivations. People of the same generation often share familiarity with significant individuals, local, and world events, noteworthy public, popular culture, and so forth. Thus, being aware of the generational identity of your audience, such as the baby boomers, the millennials, or Generation Z, allows you to develop points that are relevant to the experiences and interests of the widest possible cross-section of your listeners. The table Generational Identities in Today's Generations lists some of the prominent characteristics and values of today's generations. Here's the table of the generational identity in today's generation. The first generalization, Traditional 1925 to 1945. Here's the characteristics. Respect for authority and duty, disciplined, strong sense of right and wrong. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. Idealistic, devoted to career, self-actualizing, values, health, and wellness. Generation X, 1965 to 1979. Seeks work-life balance and entrepreneurial, technically savvy, flexible, questions authority figures, and are skeptical. Generation Y, or millennials. Technically savvy, optimistic, self-confident, educated, appreciative of diversity, entrepreneurial, respectful of elders, short attention spans. Generation Z, 2000 to X, comfortable with the highest level of technical connectivity, naturally inclined to collaborate online, boundless faith and power of technology to make things possible. Ethnic or cultural background. An understanding of and sensitivity to the ethnic and cultural composition of your listeners are key factors in delivering a successful and ethical speech. Some audience members may have a great deal in common with you. Others may be fluent in a language other than yours and must struggle to understand you. Some members of the audience may be to a distinct co-culture or social community whose perspectives and style of communicating differ significantly from yours. All will want to feel recognized by the speaker. Socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status includes income, occupation, and education. Knowing roughly where an audience falls in terms of these key variables can be critical in effectively targeting your message. Income. Income determines a people's experiences on many levels. It directly affects how they are housed, clothed, fed, and determines on what they can afford. Beyond this, income can have a ripple effect, influencing many other aspects of life. For example, depending on the income, home ownership is either taken for granted budget item or an out of reach dream. The same is true for any activity dependent on income. Given how pervasively income affects people's lives experiences, insight into this aspect of an audience's makeup can be quite important. Occupation. In most speech situations, the occupation of audience members is an important and easily identifiable demographic characteristic. Occupational interests are often tied to other areas of social concern, such as politics, the economy, education, and social reform. Personal attitudes, beliefs, and goals are also closely tied to occupational standing. Education. Levels of education strongly influences people's perspectives and range of abilities. Higher levels of education often leads to increased lifetime earnings, better health outcomes, and greater civic engagement. Depending upon audience members' level of education, your speech may treat topics at a higher or lower level of sophistication, with fewer or more examples and illustrations. Religion. Social and political views can be tied to religious traditions, making religion another key demographic variable. At least a dozen major religious traditions coexist in the United States. Not all members of the same religious tradition will agree on all issues. Catholics agree on the birth control and divorce. Jews disagree on whether to recognize the same-sex unions, and so forth. Awareness of an audience's general religious orientation can be critical when your speech touches on a topic as potentially controversial as religion itself, capital punishment, same-sex marriage, and teaching about the origins of mankind. All are rife with religious implications. Political affiliation. As with religion, beware of making unwarranted assumptions about an audience's political values and beliefs. Some people avoid anything that smacks of politics, while others enjoy a lively debate. Conservative individuals hold certain views that liberals dispute, and the chasm between far right and far left is great indeed. Unless you have prior information about the audience's political views and beliefs, you won't know where your listeners stand. Gender. Gender is another important factor in audience analysis, if only as a reminder to avoid gender stereotyping. Distinct from the fixed physical characteristics of biological sex, gender is our social and psychological sense of ourselves as males or females. Making assumptions about preferences, abilities, and behaviors of your audience members based on their presumed gender can seriously undermine their receptivity to your message. Beyond ensuring that you treat issues of gender evenly, try to anticipate the audience members' attitudes with respect to gender and plan accordingly. Group affiliations. The various groups to which audience members belong, whether social, civic, work-related, or religiously or politically affiliated, reflect their interests and values and so provide insight into what they care about. Investigating the audience members' groups' affiliations will help you craft a message that will appeal to them. Here's a quick tip. Be sensitive to disability when analyzing an audience. 1 out of every 5 people in the United States has some sort of physical or mental disability. 14% of those enrolled in college and graduate school are counted as disabled. People range from sight and hearing impairments to constraints on physical mobility and employment. Thus, disability is another demographic variable to consider when analyzing the audience. Keep persons with disabilities in mind when you speak, and use language and examples that afford them respect and dignity. Adapt to diverse audience. In the United States, 1/3 of the population, or nearly 105 million people, belong to a racial, ethnic minority group, and 38 million, or 13%, are foreign-born nationwide. Nearly 20% of the population speaks a language other than English at home. 2/3 of these speak Spanish. These figures suggest that the audience members will hold different cultural perspectives and employ different styles of communication that may or may not mesh with your own. How might you prepare to speak in front of an ethnically cultural diverse audience, including that of your classroom? In many speaking situations, your foremost concern should be to treat your listeners with dignity and act with integrity. Since values are central to who we are, identifying those of your listeners with respect to your topic can help you to avoid ethnocentrism and deliver your message in a culturally sensitive manner. Consider cross-culture values. People in every culture possess culture values related to their personal relationships, religion, occupation, and so forth. Understanding these values can help you deliver your message sensitively. While dominant culture's values in U.S. society include achievement and success equals opportunity, material comfort, and democracy, surveys of several Asian societies reveal such values as spirit of harmony, humility towards one's superiors, awe of nature, and desire for prosperity. In Mexico, group loyalty, cycle time, and fatalism, among others, as cultural values. Becoming familiar with differences as well as points of sameness in values will help you to anticipate and appeal to the values of your audience members. Individual audience analysis is always the first step when seeking to learn about an audience, but public speakers will also benefit from sensitizing themselves to broader national differences and cultural values. Gert Hofstede's wide-ranging research reveals 5 major value dimensions, or broad preferences for one state of affairs over another, as being significant across all cultures but in widely varying degrees. To see variations in these values among 50 nations, see gerthofstede.com. Here's a checklist reviewing your speech and the light of audience demographics. Does your speech acknowledge potential differences in values, beliefs, and address some sensitivity? Have you reviewed your topic in light of the age, range, and generational identity of your listeners? Do you use examples that they will recognize and find relevant? Have you tried to create a sense of identification between yourself and audience members? Are your explanations and examples at a level appropriate to the audience's sophistication and education? Do you make any unwarranted assumptions about the audience's political, religious values and beliefs? Does your topic carry religious or political overtones that are likely to stir your listeners' emotions in a negative way? Several other global surveys can also be extremely useful for learning about cultural values, such as Pew Global Attitudes Project, pewglobal.com, Gallup Worldview, worldview.gallup.com, and World Value Survey, www.worldvaluesurvey.org. Focus on universal values. As much as possible, try to determine the attitudes, beliefs, and values of audience members. At the same time, you can focus on certain values that, if not universally shared, are probably universally aspired to in the human heart. These include love, trustfulness, fairness, freedom, unity, tolerance, responsibility, and respect for life. Interview and survey audience members. You can discover information about your audience through personal interviews, telephone, or in-person surveys and published sources. Often it just takes a few questions to get some idea of where audience members stand psychologically and demographically. Conduct interviews. Interviews, even brief ones, can reveal a lot about the audience's interests and needs. You can conduct interviews one-on-one or in a group, in person, or by telephone or online. Consider interviewing a sampling of the audience or even just one knowledgeable representative of the group that you will address with. As with questionnaires, see survey with audiences which follows. Interviews usually consist of a mix of open and closed-ended questions. Survey the audience. Surveys can be as informal as a poll of several audience members or as formal as a pre-speech distribution of a written survey or questionnaire. Series of open and closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions, also called structured questions, elicit a small range of specific answers. Do you smoke cigarettes? Yes. No. I quit, but I smoked for X years. As an example. Closed-ended questions may be either fixed alternative or scale questions. Fixed alternative questions contain a limited amount of choices such as yes, no, or for X years, as the example I had said. Scale questions, also called attitude scales, measure the respondent's level of agreement or disagreement with specific issues. Flag burning should be out loud, as an example. 1 being strongly agree, 2 agree, 3 undecided, 4 disagree, 5 strongly disagree. Scale questions can be used to measure how important listeners judge something and how frequently they engage in particular behavior. How important is religion in your life is another example. 1 very important, 2 important, 3 moderately important, 4 of minor importance, 5 unimportant. Open-ended questions, also called unstructured questions, begin with a how, what, when, where, or why, and they particularly useful for probing beliefs and opinions. This style of question also allows respondents to elaborate as much as they wish. Here's an example. How do you feel about using the results of DNA testing to prove innocence of guilt in criminal proceedings? Often it just takes a few fixed alternative and scale questions to draw forth a fairly clear picture of audience members' backgrounds and attitudes and where they fall in demographic categories. You may wish to use a web-based survey software such as SurveyMonkey or Question Pro to generate surveys electronically using pre-made templates and distribute them online. Consult published sources. Organizations of all published information describing their missions, operations, and achievements. Sources include websites and related online articles, brochures, newspapers, and magazine articles, and annual reports. Although published opinion polls won't officially reflect your particular listener's responses, they too can provide valuable insight into how a representative state, national, or international sample feels about the issue in question. Consider consulting these and other polling organizations. Pew Research Center for the People and the Press, peoplepress.org, National Opinion Research Center, www.nor.uchicago.edu. Roper Center for Public Opinion Research, ropercenter.yukon.edu, Gallup, www.gallup.com. Analyze the speech setting and context. As important as analyzing the audience is assessing and then preparing for the setting in which you will give your speech, size of audience, location, time, length of speech, and rhetorical situation. 1. What is the physical setting of the speech? Is it an auditorium, banquet hall, classroom? 2. How will you need to position yourself and adjust your voice with or without a microphone? 3. What is the time of event and length of your speech? 4. How many people will attend? 5. How will any equipment I plan to use in my speech, such as an LCD projector, function in this space? 6. Where will I stand or sit in relation to the audience? 7. Will I be able to interact with the listeners? 8. Who will also be speaking? 9. How there are there special events or circumstances of concern to my audience that I should acknowledge?